Welcome to Damn Good Movie Memories with your host, Brian Davis. This podcast is the cure for your long commute and super boring workday. There, this is Brian Davis, and for this week's episode, we're going to cover Chicago, and that will be the final of the specific cities we are covering in this little trilogy of major cities and movies. Now, we are going to do kind of a fun episode where we pick movies where the city name is in the title. That will be upcoming, but right now we're going to cover Chicago, and I'll start with my list right now. All right, I'm not going to go in any particular order except for this first pick. This first pick is by far the best Chicago movie. It is also one of my favorite movies. It actually might be my favorite movie. It goes back and forth between this and Airplane, but of course it's The Blues Brothers because it's just a perfect movie because it has the best music. It has some of the funniest dialogue. You have John Belushi and Dan Aykroyd at the height of their powers. It's just a brilliant movie. You know, I remember my parents renting this when I was in probably first or second grade, and my dad, telling me about this fabulous, soul and rhythm and blues music. And really, and I talked about this on the musical episodes, it's one of the few musicals I enjoy watching over and over again because it really doesn't feel like a musical. And again, amazing soul and blues music, and you have some of the best music artists of all time with Ray Charles and James Brown, Aretha Franklin, John Lee Hooker. I mean, there's just so many great music artists here. Ray Charles, can't forget Ray Charles. So anyway, what I remember most about the movie as a kid is being enthralled with the dialogue, because it was the first movie I remember being allowed to watch that had tons of fucks and shits in it. And of course, then I would recite those favorite scenes to my friends, much to my friends' parents' chagrin, and I'm sure they love me for it, but whatever. This movie has lasted with me through my entire movie watching life, and I still never get sick of it. I probably still watch it twice a year because it's brilliant, and I can never get enough of it. And it shows all the parts of Chicago, kind of. It shows the outskirts of Chicago. But when you think of Chicago, you think of the Blues Brothers, because that's where they're based out of. And one of the greatest homage songs to Chicago is Sweet Home Chicago, and that's what version was playing at the beginning of this podcast. All right, for the rest of my picks, I'm not going to go in any specific order because it just makes it easier on me. So you can rearrange them any way you like, but now I'm going to kind of probably go in alphabetic order, and I'm going to start with About Last Night from 1986. I'm not talking about the remake. I'm talking about the original. And on the surface, the original About Last Night seems like your typical 80s romantic comedy. If you watch the trailer, that's what it feels like. Rob Lowe and James Belushi are two single guys in Chicago, and they're always on the prowl for women. Of course, Rob Lowe ends up meeting Demi Moore and sparks fly, and the two end up living together. And so what is actually unique about this film is that it really isn't a comedy at all. It's about as dramatic and as real as it gets, especially if you've been in a relationship like Lowe and Demi Moore. And, when I saw this as a teenager, I thought the movie was kind of boring. However, if you fast forward to when you're actually around their age, the movie resonates way more than it did when I was a kid. Next is Adventures in Babysitting from 1987, and it's a perfect example of why I love movies from the 1980s. There really isn't that much to the story to start with, and then before you know it, you have all these fun scenarios that pop up with action, comedy, and music, and I'm going to sound kind of old now, but this movie would never get made today. There's no superhero, no explosion, and no CGI needed. It's okay. I'll always have my movie collections of my 80s and 70s and even before that movies to keep me happy. And growing up as a kid, I always had a crush on Elizabeth Shue ever since she was in The Karate Kid. She was Allie with an eye, and so I was all in when I heard about Adventures in Babysitting, and my dad loved the soundtrack because it was filled with blues and soul music, and it was our introduction to the legendary blues guitarist Albert Collins, and of course the famous scene, "Ain't Nobody Leaves This Place Without Singing the Blues," and there's also a fabulous song at the end and the beginning by Percy Sledge called "Just Can't Stop," and it's tremendous. Next is Eight Men Out from 1988, and this is actually one of the best historical baseball movies ever made, and covering one of the most controversial scandals in sports history. So if you didn't know already, in 1919, 8 players on the Chicago White Sox were accused of throwing the World Series for that season against the Cincinnati Reds. And so even though the players were acquitted in the courts, they were still given a lifetime ban from Major League Baseball. And there have been debates about a few of the players regarding if they actually threw any games, specifically shoeless Joe Jackson, who was one of the best hitters of his era, and third baseman Buck Weaver. So Buck Weaver was played by John Cusack, and D.B. Sweeney played Joe Jackson. And both players actually performed really well during the series, but due to the players hearing about the payoffs of the other 6 players, they were basically guilty by association. And if you were born in Chicago or you lived in Chicago, you whether you're a Cubs fan or a White Sox fan, it doesn't matter. This is one of the most famous scandals of sports history, let alone just Chicago lore. And so if you're a fan of sports or baseball, this is a must-watch. This next movie can definitely challenge the Blues Brothers for one of the most iconic Chicago movies, and that's of course John Hughes's classic Ferris Bueller's Day Off from 1986. And so whenever I was sick from school, this always seemed to be one of the go-to movies I would watch. And John Hughes and his brilliant and creative movies are sorely missed in today's Hollywood. It's funny because I've told this story before, but during the famous parade scene when Matthew Broderick lip syncs Twist and Shout, the version by the Beatles, of course, I asked my dad if it was really him singing, and I think I was 7 or 8 years old at the time, and my dad dryly replied, "No, son, I believe that's some little-known band from England called the Beatles." That was my dad. Thank you so much. But he did make a point of telling me that the Isley Brothers were the first to have a hit with that song. As a kid, Ferris always seemed like a blast, and it was fun to watch, but I always laughed the hardest at the scenes with Principal Ed Rooney, played by Jeffrey Jones, and Ferris's sister, Janine, or Shauna, played by Jennifer Grey. And, so good. And, of course, at the end, with the very drugged-out Charlie Sheen, as it turned out, he wasn't really acting that much. And as we discovered years later, this role wasn't much of a reach, and Charlie's always winning, I suppose. But the movie itself is a total winner and definitely one of the most iconic Chicago movies. You see Wrigley Field, you see the famous museums, you see the downtown parade. It is just synonymous with Chicago. Next up is a movie that is really underrated and often forgotten that it actually takes place in Chicago, and that is My Bodyguard from 1980. And I always enjoyed My Bodyguard when I was a kid, ever since every boy, and I'm sure girls as well, wished they had some sort of bodyguard to protect them from the school bully. And My Bodyguard is a great dramedy starring Chris Makepeace, which he was also in Meatballs, and Adam Baldwin, Matt Dillon, Martin Mull, and the always amazing Ruth Gordon. And so if you didn't know already, the plot goes something like this. Clifford, that's Chris Makepeace, moves to a new town in Chicago and begins his first year in high school. However, since he's, new and he's small in stature, he's the target of the school bully, and that is Melvin, played by Matt Dillon, and the resident bully of the school. And so Melvin always takes Clifford's lunch money, beats him up, and basically makes his life miserable. Clifford then gets the brilliant idea of hiring Ricky, played by Adam Baldwin, to protect him. Ricky is physically intimidating since he's bigger than everyone else at the school, and he has a reputation of killing multiple people. They're all urban legends, of course, but Melvin has no idea what's actually in store for him, and it's kind of It's a good buddy movie too, because it's not, on the surface it seems like a comedy, but it's a little deeper than that, and it's kind of still got the grittiness of the 70s because it's in 1980, but you could see the shift into kind of these really good teen movies that came out of the 1980s as well. All right, next is Never Been Kissed from 1999, and it's a fun romantic comedy starring Drew Barrymore, who I always love, David Arquette, and Michael Vartan, and Leela Sobieski and Molly Shannon and John C. Reilly and James Franco also co-star, and this was actually James Franco's film debut. It had been a while since I'd seen this movie before I just purchased it not too long ago, but I always remembered the nickname Drew Barrymore's character, which was Josie Grossi. Now I can't hear the name Josie without putting that name together. I know, I'm very mature when it comes to that. But this is actually a really good, it's a really fun rom-com. It's very predictable. It does take place in Chicago, but I enjoy Drew Barrymore. I enjoy Drew Barrymore movies. I always have since I was a kid, and I continue to follow her career no matter what she does. I really enjoy the Santa Clarita Diet that's currently on Netflix. So if you're into rom-coms and you haven't seen this one yet, and you also like Chicago, check out Never Been Kissed. All right, my final Chicago movie for this episode is Running Scared from 1986. And of course, one of my favorite podcasts, the Awesome 80s Podcast, did a deep dive into Running Scared, so definitely check them out. If you didn't know already, Running Scared is a buddy cop dramedy from the 1980s starring Gregory Hines and Billy Crystal. Jimmy Smits also co-stars. Hines and Crystals really had a nice chemistry in this film, and it's actually too bad they didn't make more films together. If you didn't know already, the quick plot involves the two police detectives that almost get killed on a case. Their captain instructs them to go on a vacation, and they contemplate retiring and opening up a bar in Florida instead of living in Chicago. However, that would make for a really boring film, and the guys end up getting sucked back into police life. All right, so if you haven't seen that already, check out Running Scared. And now let's hear what everyone else has to pick for their favorite Chicago movies.
All right, we're going to do cities yet again. You can see an ongoing
theme
here.
The trilogy.
So this time we're going to Chicago. We did San Francisco and New York, and hopefully I do this in order, otherwise I'm screwed. But if not, we're doing Chicago now. And
right.
Yes, so I think this is your longest list of the two cities we did.
For some reason, I don't know, I seem to notice when movies are set in Chicago, or just a lot of my more favorite movies are in Chicago. I don't know.
That's interesting.
Good city for movies.
Yeah.
I don't know. Anyway, so I'll get started.
All right.
First one is The Fugitive.
Yes, that's a good point. Yeah.
Harrison Ford, Tommy Lee Jones. Very Chicago, because he's all over the city, running around the whole city.
That's right.
Chicago area, and it's the whole dragnet set out for him. So yeah, I don't know.
Now, did you ever see the TV show? Did you ever go back and watch it?
I did not. I didn't even know when it first came out. I didn't even know it was based on one. I'm like, no.
Okay.
My dad's like, oh yeah, it's based on a TV show. I'm surprised they made that into a movie or whatever.
Because my dad always raved about The Fugitive and everything, and I need to go back and watch it. So that's. But I grew up with the movie as you did. So,
I never. Yeah, I didn't know anything about the show, but the movie was great.
The movie's great. And Tommy Lee Jones.
Everyone's got a Chicago accent.
Oh, exactly.
Sorry, Chicagoans. I'm sorry about that. That was my weekend.
Hey, we listened to the Awesome 80s podcast, so we go Cubs.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah. So actually, sorry about the Cubs. Actually,
man.
Yeah.
Anyone but the Dodgers. So.
Anyone but the Dodgers. San Francisco boys say that.
All right. Anyway. So there's a whole bunch of the John Hughes. Basically, most of his movies are set in Chicago.
Yes.
Suburban Chicago. The one I picked was Ferris Bueller because he actually ends up in the city a lot.
Absolutely.
I mean, he spends the day there. Wrigley Field.
Yep.
Downtown.
The museums.
Rivers. Museums. So it's very super Chicago-y, and I don't know. I just love all the John Hughes. And It's I don't know. It's interesting to think about his. He has like this whole universe set in suburban Chicago.
Yeah.
It's like the John Hughes verse, and
and we get into that.
You get the feel of it's just really like he created this place that it's hard to think about. Like I've been to Chicago once. It's hard to think about Chicago without thinking about all the John Hughes movies.
Absolutely
taking place there. So
and actually we actually talk about this. It's the fictional town of Shermer, Illinois, when it comes to John Hughes, and Kevin Smokler and I talked about this. So if you want to go back and listen to that episode, it's a really interesting how he kind of puts that universe together. Even though it's not obvious, you kind of see a tie-in with all those characters. So you could see how Molly Ringwald's character could have hung out with Ferris Bueller or something like that. So
yeah, for sure. So John Hughes, genius.
Oh, absolutely.
Blues Brothers.
Yeah, that's my number one pick.
Takes place all around Chicago. Probably Milwaukee too. I think they go up to Milwaukee. It's not
possibly.
After Wisconsin or something.
Where is Bob's Country Bunker?
Well, I don't know about that.
It's on the border.
It could be somewhere in somewhere in Illinois. I mean, there's some Illinois has a surprising amount of countryside, so I don't know. For having such a big city like Chicago, it's also like a lot of farmland there too. So
they definitely go downtown when they go to Aretha Franklin's soul food restaurant.
Yeah,
you can see John
Ray
Hooker.
Charles.
Ray's music.
Ray's music.
It's so good.
So good. And the chase at the end where they end up at City Hall. Yeah, it's pretty awesome.
and the cameo with Steven Spielberg as the clerk.
Yeah. So he was good. The Dark Knight, which is technically set in Gotham, but it was like the second of the Batman movies. Was Gotham is supposed to really be New York City if you think about it from the comic books point of view. But I liked that Christopher Nolan the first one was the first Batman. Batman Begins was probably more like New York, and then he made the second one, Dark Knight, Chicago, which was, I don't know, for no reason, but it was cool that he did. You recognize the buildings there in Chicago.
Well, it's kind of like Metropolis. You assume that's New York, too.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. There's different, like the light side and the dark sides of
exactly.
New York.
Exactly.
Yeah. Let's see. Untouchables, which was,
of course,
Depression era New York, Prohibition era New York. Sorry, not New York. Chicago. Sorry.
Chicago, we've been doing a lot, folks. So,
I'm mixed up.
Yes.
Untouchables, Elliot Ness and Al Capone was very synonymous with Chicago. So.
And again, a great cast with Kevin Costner, and Sean Connery, and
Andy Garcia, and De Niro, of course, is Al Capone.
That's right. And then the guy with the glasses, I can't think of his name, but he's
good character actor and stuff. Yeah, he was the.
I think he's got 3 names. I want to say.
But we'll have to research it.
You'll know when maybe I'll go back and do it. But he's in that Never Cry Wolf movie. He's I think in the Buddy Holly story. He's the guy in American Graffiti.
Oh yeah.
Yes,
he's good.
Yeah, really good.
The Sting, which I
didn't realize.
But I realized later it was in Chicago.
I won't steal that one from you.
Depression era Chicago. The Sting is one of my favorite movies because I love Robert
Shaw.
Shaw and Paul Newman and Robert Redford. All those guys are awesome.
And the character actors in that are excellent.
All of them are great.
Mr. Hand's in it. So,
yeah. And last is High Fidelity.
That's a good
John
one.
Cusack,
who is a Chicago guy.
Who's a Chicago guy, and he's in a lot of the John Hughes, or not John Hughes, but the 80s, like...
Yeah.
Say Anything.
Cameron Crowe movies.
Yeah, Cameron Crowe. All the... he was in, every... I don't know.
Yeah.
All his younger era movies were, I think, in Chicago. So
that's a great one, because... and his sister, John Cusack. They're in a lot of movies together.
Yeah, they have the family connection.
Yes.
I think John Cusack produced High Fidelity, or was one of the producers on it. So, not surprising he cast his sister in it.
Yeah, absolutely. And she's great. She was one of my number one character actors. Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. I don't know.
That's a great list. That's a really good job.
I've been to Chicago, and I enjoyed it. I took a riverboat tour that was about the architecture. It was just cool to see the city from a river. I didn't care so much about the details of the architecture. I'm not that much. So
you need to hang out with Malin.
I know Malin would probably like it. But I love Chicago for the food. I basically ate the whole time I was there, and I happened to be there. It was for a conference, but I happened to be there when they had it was I think the Taste of Chicago festival. So there was just this giant food fest.
So how do you feel about deep dish pizza as opposed to the New York style pizza?
I don't know. I mean, I love deep dish pizza. Chicago style pizza is awesome. It's not my favorite pizza because it's not
so much
pizza.
Cheese.
Yeah, well, I don't know. It's just not something I would eat all the time.
Sure.
But it's a great. I don't know. It's great food. I have a hard time with people who say it's, I hate Chicago pizza. It's not pizza. Well, maybe it's not pizza, but it's still really, really good.
Exactly. It's a different style of pizza, and it's pretty well known. So,
I don't know. I love it. I made sure to eat some authentic Chicago pizza when I visited. So
nice.
It was
all right. So
great place to eat some food.
If you're going to pick between, so we've covered all the cities. If you've lived or you've been to every single place.
Yeah.
Food-wise, what would you rather be for San Francisco, New York, and Chicago?
Well, if I wanted to get a heart attack as soon as possible, I'd go to Chicago because all the food I had there was kind of meat or cheese based, and it was really good. Mm-hmm. Plus, there's the Garrett's popcorn, which is
which
so good.
Our friends in Chicago
send us that bucket of popcorn, but I stood in line for like a half hour just to get popcorn because they make it hot and fresh, and they pour the molten caramel on it.
Yeah, it is so good.
Cheddar cheese.
Yep.
Oh god,
it's good stuff.
Chicago is great. I don't know. I mean, San Francisco and New York are more known for their gourmet food.
Yeah.
And actually, I felt like New York was better for getting cheap eats. Like, pretty good food for really cheap.
Okay.
I don't think you can do that as well in San Francisco. It's more like if you eat cheap stuff in San Francisco, it's really bad junk.
Yeah.
But you could even get like a pretty good slice of pizza in New York for cheap.
Interesting.
Like pizza and a Coke. Because so many people buy it there.
All right, so we know Winley's going to like this part of the episode because all we do is talk
the
about
food. Yeah.
Yes, so cool.
Yeah, I made sure to eat at a lot of good restaurants in New York.
Yeah,
I would definitely go back to Chicago just for the food.
For the food, and maybe catch a ball game. You never know.
I would love to see Wrigley too. I didn't get a chance to do that when I was there.
Mm-hmm. You can avoid Comiskey. It's okay.
Yeah. What's the new game? If there's the old Comiskey,
that's different. Yeah. That's true. All right. Well, again, thank you as always. We delve into other things. And this is great. So thanks, Brian.
All right.
All right, we're back with Enrica. Welcome
Hello.
back. So this week we're going to do our favorite Chicago movies.
Chicago.
So you've never been to Chicago, but that's
Never been. I don't even know what it looks like. I don't even think if you showed me a picture of a city, I'd be like, yeah, that's Chicago.
But you know through film, and that's what we're going to talk about.
Yeah, I do. I mean, I don't even know if you can say that. You know, like when you see a movie and it just takes place in a place.
Yeah.
And like they say it's Chicago, but like you don't really get to know the place.
Right.
You know? Like, that's how I feel about Chicago. Like, I've seen so many movies taking place there, but I never once, when watching the movie, thought, like, oh, Chicago, that seems nice. Mm-hmm. Or, like, that's clearly a cool place.
So is Chicago on your bucket list of cities to go to, or do you have a bucket list of places to see?
Not really. I would love to go to San Diego.
San Diego is great. Yeah.
The zoo and the pretty surfing people. And yeah, I mean that's the only other city I've always really wanted to go to.
Interesting.
But I'm very fortunate. I have gone on 2 cross-country trips. Mm-hmm. So even though I'm only 26, I've seen most of the major cities.
That's awesome.
So I've been to a lot of really great places. Been to Portland, to Seattle, all the places I've always wanted to go to. Mm-hmm. I've been Pittsburgh, Philly, New York.
Have you been to Boston?
Been to Boston twice, 3 times. Mm-hmm. Loved it. So, yeah, I've had a really good experience just with America. So, I love America.
So you just have to go to San Diego?
But I've never been to Chicago. I've been to Union Pier, Michigan.
Okay.
Which is across the lake from Chicago. So you can, like, see the city and the lake. And we crossed, when we stopped in that area of Michigan, we drove, like, around the lake and we saw Chicago.
Okay.
But that was it. Did never really like spent time.
Right.
So
we're going to spend time talking about our favorite Chicago movies now.
Yeah.
So let's go through the list.
Okay. I most recently saw The Big Sick.
Oh, okay.
With Kumail Nanjiani. I think that's how you say his name. Mm-hmm. He's the guy in Silicon Valley, like the Pakistani guy.
Yes.
And he's freaking hilarious.
He is. He's really funny. He's great in that show.
He's so good in the show. And I didn't know that the story of The Big Sick, where he meets his girlfriend and she gets this horrible autoimmune disease, which I relate to on many levels, but I didn't know it was a true story of like him and how he met his wife.
I didn't know that either.
So yeah, he met his wife and she was a white woman, he was a Pakistani man, and there was all that like tension, and they met. I don't remember how they met. He was just like a comic, like a struggling comic, and she was a college student or like a master's student, and they like hit it off at a comedy club or something. But then they dated and they had a great time, but he had to like hide their relationship because she wasn't Pakistani.
Right. So his family didn't accept her.
No.
Interesting.
Okay. Because she wasn't Pakistani. So throughout the film, it's hilarious. It's a funny movie. Like his parents are trying to introduce him to like set him up with his wife.
Okay.
Or set him up with a Pakistani woman.
So do they do arranged marriages?
They do.
Okay.
Most of their marriages are arranged marriages.
Got it.
I think it's like 1 in 7 is love marriage.
Wow. Okay.
Which is, I'm not sure if it's the same statistic as India, but both India and Pakistan have the same like culture of arranged marriages.
Right.
So he, that was always in the cards for him, and he didn't expect to fall in love with a white woman. He obviously wanted to like please his parents.
Sure.
But then she gets really sick, and like he feels like he has this connection to her family through being there and nursing her back to health. And
so did you end up accepting her through the turmoil?
His family has to be like forced into accepting her. It's kind of funny how he like forces their hand. They like plan on kicking him out of the family,
really?
And he like just doesn't have it. He like comes to family events anyway.
Yeah.
And eventually they're like,
what can you do?
Yeah, he's still the same person. We still love him. Like, what are we going to do?
Yeah.
So he's like, I know that you guys have all decided to kick me out of the family, but I disagree. So I'm not being kicked out of the family. And he's like, yeah. So
and how are you going to argue with that?
Right. And the movie, it does feature Chicago. I mean, it features Chicago, specifically Chicago's like comedy scene, because it's such a hub. Like, it's like the last East Coast city before you like hop on a plane and come out west. So it's like a big venue. Pittsburgh as well was a big like arts comedy venue for like small tours.
Right.
Small touring bands and comedy people. So the comedy scene in Chicago is like was cool and the way it was featured, but I don't have any like visual understanding of like what the city looks like or anything. Yeah.
Okay, so was that the one movie?
There's one, and then Bridesmaids. I didn't know was also took place in Chicago. Right? Like that's what I mean by Chicago movies. Like they take place in a city, general.
Yeah.
And then you find out later that city was Chicago, and you're like, oh, I didn't know that.
Holy crap! Yeah.
Because Chicago doesn't have like a legit. Like, that's not the word. Like a memorable look.
Right.
I mean, unless they go to like
Wrigley Field.
or to like the Bean.
Yeah.
Or the big, There's not like scenes that you automatically are like, yeah, that's Chicago. And then the Blues Brothers films.
Absolutely.
And the only reason I know those are Chicago is because of their accents.
That's right. Yeah.
Like they have such strong Chicago accents.
And that's what's the great part about the original Blues Brothers is they give the DMV the address of West Addison,
Chicago.
Which is Wrigley Field. And so when the Nazis tried to catch
they
show up to Wrigley Field.
It's so funny. And, one of the fun things about the Blues Brothers is they're always on the run. So they're always going to, like, these locations.
Like Bob's Country Bunker around wherever that is.
Yeah, but they were like, got those Chicago accents and those black suits and stuff.
That's right.
So, I mean, those are on there. And then the last one I have is actually, like, Chicago, which...
The movie Chicago, the musical.
The musical, yeah. The Renee Zellweger musical.
And if you want to go back and listen to what Enrique thinks about Chicago in depth, check out the musical episode.
I love that musical. I think it's so good. Oh, I love it. But it also heavily features
Chicago. Yeah.
Chicago, but again, it's a period piece about Chicago. So it's like that. What is it? The 20s?
Probably like during the Roaring 20s, like the Flappers and things like that. Yeah.
It's like the 20s into the 30s because there's some Depression stuff. Maybe I'm misremembering it. But yeah, it's kind of like a response to like female empowerment and violence against women, and how the 20s kind of gave women this new sense of empowerment. But like, I love it. I love how it's set in Chicago in the jail cells and the idea of like these apartments in Chicago being kind of moody and dark, and it's got like a dark vibe. Yeah. And I associate Chicago with like this dark vibe. I don't know why. Maybe it's because it's really depressing.
We'll leave it on that note. So, thank you, Enrique. It took her almost 2 months.
Oh my god!
But I know I keep expanding it.
Logarithmic like.
It makes it funnier that way.
Just jump like that.
In any case, Danielle is back, as you could have guessed. That's Danielle. When you hear the laugh, it's Danielle. And this week we are going to cover Chicago movies.
Yeah.
We have done New York, we have done San Francisco.
Yes.
But now it's time to do Chicago.
Yes.
And you actually said you found. You're unlike other people. You found Chicago movies easier than you found New York movies.
Yeah, I didn't know that I've been watching so many
Chicago movies.
Yes, I did find easier.
So did you come up with a top 6 list?
Yes, of course.
It wasn't 6.5. It wasn't 6.75.
No, 6 is good.
Okay.
It's good enough.
Good enough. All right,
Enough.
Let's start from the top or bottom or however you want to call it. Number 6.
Number 6 is Chicago. No, it's not Chicago.
Oh, okay. Get out.
No, it's worse. I mean, Chicago is a musical. It's fine, but it's
too obvious.
Don't know. It's too obvious, and I don't know. But number 6 is dumb. But I laugh with that movie. But it's dumb, so I want to make clear it is dumb movie.
Okay.
It's Bad Moms.
Oh,
and
you do love that movie. Yes,
I didn't love it.
I didn't know it was so it's in the suburb of Chicago?
It's the suburbs of Chicago.
Got it.
And it is funny because it's so, like, I'm
It's
a
your
mom,
life.
and,
Yeah.
you know, I need to face the PTA moms who are scary. So I feel her. I know what she's going through.
Now, which character was going through that one?
It was Mila
Kunis.
the one who stole Demi Moore's husband.
Yes.
Yeah, so
Mila Kunis.
I know that. I know that part. Yes, so I don't like her as an actress. Not because Demi Moore. I don't like Demi Moore either. So as an actress, I don't like her. But I don't like her. I don't like her in the movies. I don't think she's a good actress at all. But there are the other, like there's the one from Frozen.
The Kristen Bell.
Yes. And the other one who is like the...
Is it Christina Applegate in it?
I don't know.
No.
But she's insane. Everything's about sex. And you know what? And then there's the PTA moms, like stick up, you know. And they're you're going to delete this part.
No, I'm not. Oh, Catherine Hahn.
Yes, it came by accident.
Yeah.
So you portray everything. Like you have all the moms, the crazy one, the working mom, the stay-at-home,
the one that likes to
helicopter
party.
mom who is like everything's perfect.
Yeah.
And you have the PTA moms and you have the followers.
Yeah.
That happens. I mean, I go through that.
That's why it resonates with you.
So, like the scene about the baking sale, it's hilarious because it's kind of not like that. They doing like a joke about it, but it was so simple before. When I was a kid, you're gonna have a baking sale. You bake a cake and you give it to school, and they have a party, and people buy the cake and get the money. Now you need to have the gluten allergy, the nut allergy, this allergy. It needs to be organic, fat-free. Oh God, it's annoying. So the bake I did once because I work. I go to school. I have 2 kids. It's everything on me alone. So one baking sale I completely forgot, and Clara was crying her eyes out.
Oh my God! Did you put sugar and butter?
I just I took my thing, the plastic thing. I went to Nobby Hill. I bought the brownies, and I took it out from their package. I put on my nice tray, and I put like paper towel, to pretend it was. And they asked, "Oh, is this homemade?" Oh, yeah. And that's what I did. So that's why I like the movie. But it's like once to see the movie, and then you see another with your girlfriends and laugh.
It's more
about
fun.
it.
Now, have you seen the sequel, which just came out, Bad Moms Christmas?
No, I'm waiting because I'm gonna rent and I'm gonna have like a cocktail night for my friends, and we're gonna be in the small movie theater and just watch and
that's nice.
Just in between friends.
That's cool.
Yes.
All
so that's number 6.
That's a good one.
I don't even need it took like half an hour to talk about it.
All right, we're done.
Because it's recent, I could remember everything, so it's easier. So my number 5, I watch in the movie theater actually, is I watch a few times. Is Dragonfly with Kevin Costner.
Costner.
Almost there. And I is in Chicago. He's a doctor. Him and his wife are like doctors at the Chicago hospital. She's 7 months pregnant or so, like her belly is huge. And she goes to Venezuela to help some, some village that don't have doctors. Those doctors that go to place that need help.
Yep.
So, and she dies there. Did you watch this movie?
I've never seen it.
So I cannot say.
No, you can. You definitely
so she dies in an accident, a landslide, and it hits her bus, and she dies, and there's kids in the bus too. Sad scene to see it. And the body was never found, and he's recovering. He's in grief, and he starts to have the visions about her. and things start getting creepy. Actually, you can get
this
a
is why
feel
you
like
it.
you can get like you know jump a little bit from the chair a little bit. It is like he's grieving, but there's some scenes like he can see her face. He's dragonfly because it's her favorite insect. Animal, come on, it's 3 divisions: animal, mineral, and vegetable.
How do you spell
minerals?
How do you spell ADD?
And she has a birthmark that is like in the shape of a dragonfly. So there's this scene that he's looking at the window and he sees a dragonfly at night, and he keeps looking, and then comes her face on the freaking window. Oh my god, a jump! I wasn't expecting that. And there's dead people because there's the patient and the guy is dead, and suddenly he talks with him. So you have this.
Now I can see why you like it, because you like these types of movies.
But but at the end, it's a beautiful movie. So it was her giving him. It was not his mind. I thought it was his mind, but it was her
giving signs.
And he goes to Venezuela.
Now, did they have kids?
No,
okay.
But he goes to Venezuela to see, because she does in a map. She draws something in a map too, and he finds out like they saved the baby, and the baby was there. So it's so beautiful, like the rap. So ghosts are not as bad. So that's a good present. You don't need to be scared.
You don't need to see the movie now, folks.
Well, it's full of plots. This podcast.
I know. Come on.
So number 4.
Yes.
Everybody picked this one.
We'll see.
Risky Business.
You know what? I forgot. I totally forgot. Well, or maybe I didn't. Okay. I still haven't done Chicago yet. So,
you didn't do it? So,
I have my list, but I haven't recorded it.
I'm recording this before then he records. So if he gets, he's stealing my idea. So
maybe I picked it. It's in the suburbs of Chicago.
It is.
So that's probably why I didn't pick it.
Well,
no, there's nothing wrong with that. I was trying to look for more downtown.
My goodness. Oh. That's why you guys are so picky.
No,
I thought everything that was about Chicago.
You're right. It is actually. Well, you could just say Illinois. So,
so I didn't even know who was there.
Risky.
I'm not good in geography. I don't know why Chicago in the map.
You get a pass. You weren't born here.
So that movie is fun, and I watched it very young. I was not supposed to watch at that age.
Because he was dancing in his underwear?
Oh, no, that was the easiest part. But how about the prostitutes on the house?
Well, they're on the train.
Yeah, so I watched that. I didn't get it the first time I watched. I was so young. And then I watched again. I like Rebecca De Mornay.
She plays the lead prostitute.
Yeah, she is. They had a relationship at that time. They were dating, and Tom Cruise was Tom Cruise. He was cute. I never liked him, but
that was his kind of first breakout role, because this is before
Top
Gun.
Yeah. So it was a funny movie, like very. Oh, he's raising money to fix the
because he threw a party.
Stuff. It's fun. I remember as a teenager watching. And I like it. If I watch now, not as much.
It's got the fun 80s vibe to it. And that scene when him dancing to Bob Seger's Old Time Rock and Roll, that is an iconic scene. Because you see him in his socks and just his underwear and long shirt, sliding by.
It's like,
that.
Everybody did that.
Everybody knows that, yeah.
Everybody did that.
I still do that, folks. So there you go.
So I like it.
No,
it was
a fun movie. That's a good
one.
I
could not do it without adding this movie. You did, but I didn't.
No, you don't know if I did or not.
Oh, it's stealing my idea. Okay. So, but this one you got it, and you cannot deny it. My number 3 is Ferris Bueller. I don't even need to complain.
Well, if you can't say it, no.
I know, I cannot say it. So.
This is, I think, everyone's could be, not everyone's, but many people's number 1 Chicago
was not
movie.
mine.
No, I know, but it's probably mine.
It is. Oh my god, the music! I think I don't forget that movie because the song in the parade. I mean, that was, of course, that was like the best.
So I've told this story on the podcast before, but when I first saw this, I thought Matthew Broderick, Ferris, was singing. I thought that was him singing.
Oh, really?
And my dad was like, yeah, that's a little small band known as the Beatles. Look, I was like 8, 9 at the time. So,
my gosh. No, so I like it. I watched very young as well, like teen. I don't know which year. how old I was.
Sure.
But I watched a few times later, and it's funny. Like the friend is hilarious. I love the guy.
Yeah.
No, the guy.
Cameron.
Oh my God, the car. Poor guy. Oh my goodness. So it's all fun, and they lie to everybody. It's hilarious.
So the funny part is, all of the scene, like obviously it is in downtown Chicago where they had the parade. They went to the museum.
Yes.
They went to the Cubs game, which is in Wrigley Field, which is a famous baseball park. But it's funny. So the car scene where the car he kills the car.
Yes.
That's filmed in L.A. because that house looks nothing like a Chicago house. It looks like kind of an L.A. modern
really?
house. So not all of it was filmed in
and
LA.
the sister, the frustrated
Oh,
sister.
she's so
my
good. But
God.
of course, that's Baby. What's her name now? I'm forgetting her name.
I'll never remember her name.
But that's Jeannie in that movie.
Yeah,
Jennifer Grey.
She disappeared because she had the surgery on the nose, right?
Yeah.
And then
she didn't look like Jennifer Grey anymore.
Yeah. Hollywood. Oh my God.
She was in a lot of good movies in the 80s.
She did. She was in all the movies that I watched. She was there.
So Dirty Dancing, Ferris Bueller, and Red Dawn. So
but there's more.
There are more.
It was like, whoa, those people, like some actors for the 80s, they would be on and on.
They were.
Right?
Yeah.
So, okay, so this is my number 3.
The one you don't see anymore, though, is Ferris's girlfriend, Mia Sara. You really didn't see her much after that.
I don't even remember,
exactly.
like the face. I remember the face, but I don't know who is she.
Yeah.
Right. So,
here's some more trivia.
What?
Because I don't know if I'm talking about it or not when I get there. But the Ferris's parents,
mm-hmm.
they actually ended up getting married after the movie.
Really?
Yeah, they ended up dating and getting
That's
married.
Cute.
Yeah, isn't that funny?
They still married?
I don't know. That would have to find out. There you go. All right, number 2.
Number 2 is I don't know if I can say that, but The Fugitive.
Yeah.
With Harrison Ford and Tommy Lee Jones.
Yeah, that's a great one.
So he's a surgeon on the doctor, whatever you call it, on the hospital, and his wife. I remember this scene. Like his wife they're attacked, right? She dies. And, I don't remember.
I think his name is Richard Kimball.
So she dies, and I remember him say, "Oh, the guy had a prosthetic arm, and no one would believe him." And she made a 911 call saying it was the husband, but she had the guy made her do it, and everything was so plot against him that I didn't even know. Maybe he did kill the wife because the insurance money. So, and then comes Tommy Lee Jones. I was in love with him.
He's the guy that always plays the same role too. Tommy Lee Jones.
He does.
He's great.
But I was in love, literally. Yeah. He was in love, platonic. I would watch his movies because I was in love in the 90s with Tommy Lee Jones.
Wow.
I watched Men in Black because of him, a bunch of movies because of Tommy Lee Jones.
Most people like Will Smith. You like Tommy Lee Jones.
I'm the opposite.
Yeah.
So because I love his face, he was such a good actor, so I love it. How he played the. So it's coming back, the feeling. So yes, he's a U.S. Marshal.
Yes.
That is there's a movie
called U.S. Marshal.
Oh my God, that movie!
Wesley
I love
Snipes
it.
is in.
I thought that movie was in Chicago, but it's starting in Chicago with Wesley Snipes driving, and then goes to New York. Yeah. They're playing, so everything. So I like it. The Harrison Ford is amazing as always, and then you understand what happened. Like the pharmaceutical, of course, they need to screw up everything. Yeah. So the woman died by accident. They want to kill the guy because I think the drug gives he found out it was kidney cancer or.
And so they suppressed the findings.
They want to kill him, so because the FDA didn't
want to approve it.
Yes, did approve it.
Well, so it's funny because my dad, growing up, my dad's favorite TV show was The Fugitive. This is based on a TV show
from the
60s. So I think my dad was in the military at the time when the final episodes were being done, so I'm not sure. I think he eventually found out later how it ended. But no, it started. David Jansen played the Harrison Ford character. It was on for probably 5 years, 3 or 4, 3 to 5 years, and so then they turned it into a movie. So many people like my age only know the movie as the original, but it's not. It's the TV show. So when we do the episode best TV shows that became movies, This should definitely
I
be
can
one
add
of them.
that. But
Yeah.
I didn't watch the TV show.
No, many people haven't. I mean, you're too young. I'm too young, so you can see it on. I mean, I'm sure. It's
Thank
on
you for
Hulu.
the young
Yeah,
part.
you're very young.
My
Yes.
day is bright now.
There you go. You're younger than me.
So, my number one for Chicago. See, I have like a variety of
You do?
topics.
Whoever said you didn't have.
So my number one, and I really like this movie. I need to watch it again, by the way, because I was forgetting how it was. The movie is Primal Fear with Richard Gere.
Oh, I've heard of this.
It is.
I had to see this.
Well, I mean, I didn't see that one coming, and then the Edward Norton.
Oh yeah, he's
He
great
was
actor.
the altar boy,
Uh-huh.
and he was amazing in that movie. So the movie is about like Catholic Church, of course.
I have seen this. Yeah.
And pedophilia, etc. And then this archbishop was killed, and the accused was the boy, the altar boy, because he was sexually abused.
Yeah.
No one knew until then. Then there's a videotape that shows that, and Richard Gere is a lawyer.
Yeah, he's a defense attorney.
He's a defense attorney, and he gets the case pro bono,
Yeah.
and he goes, and he actually, because it's Roy, I think it's Roy, the name of the boy that is calm. So the boy is really calm, and suddenly he just snaps, and he becomes Aaron, or I don't know if it's the way around. Like Roy is the boy, is the good, and Aaron is the bad, right? So they say, oh, he has multiple personalities disorder. So I remember on the trial, because but I don't think they could do this, because then Roy would have a motive, right? Because he was not raped, but sexually abused by the archbishop. But it's interesting because he switched, to Roy and Aaron so well done. You don't see as the same person.
Yeah.
He was really great on this one. And then they tried to bring Aaron the trial, because the Roy guy is very, you believe that he's innocent, and actually, and then Richard Gere starts like poking about the sexual abuse, and Aaron comes out, and I think he tries to kill the prosecutor, like the one that is against.
Prosecutor. Yeah. Or district attorney.
And so he doesn't go to jail. He goes to psychiatric hospital, like maximum penalty. He's gonna be there for life.
Yeah.
But at the end is I don't know. Can I say?
Of course.
So
we should just call you spoiler.
Yeah. No. What it? Did you see the movie? Did you watch it?
A long time ago. Yes, I've seen it. Yeah.
So it's interesting because I didn't see. I was surprised because when he grabs the girl on the trial, he always said, "When I become Aaron, I cannot remember what he did." When he goes back to Roy, it's like a blank. It's like he was sleeping.
Yeah.
So as Richard Gere gives the news, "Oh, look, you're going to the hospital, blah blah blah," and as he's leaving, Roy asks him, "How is this person's neck, the woman's neck?" And the Richard Gere, "You shouldn't remember that because you're as Aaron."
That's right.
So he says, Roy never existed. And he was like, "No, actually, Aaron never existed."
Yeah.
So it's super creepy then. Yeah. So
well, that's why Edward Norton's a great actor.
He is,
so,
right?
Yeah. The other cast is Laura Linney. She's in it. She's very good. And Frances McDormand.
Yeah.
Who, of course, best known in Fargo and many other things. But she's a great actress. So it's a great cast. Definitely check out Primal Fear. It came out in 1996.
Yes.
And I know it's on Netflix because I watched it on Netflix not too long ago.
It was on Netflix?
Yeah.
It is on Netflix?
Well, I mean, I don't know if it's on streaming. I'm still a dinosaur, and I still get the actual DVDs in the mail. Because you get a bigger catalog.
It's expensive.
No, it's not. It's like $8 a month for one DVD.
I pay $7. It's $1. $12 per year.
I'll loan you $1. For being on the show, I'll pay you $1 a month.
If you count 10 years, it's like $1,200. That's a lot of money.
On that note, we get economic lessons from Danielle. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Okay, we're back with Samantha. Welcome back.
Hello.
Oh, thank you.
So we're going to talk about Chicago, and you've been to Chicago a few times.
I have.
And you go to the music festivals there.
Oh, I do.
And it was a Riot Fest?
Riot Fest.
Yeah,
Uh-oh. Inside fact about me.
That's right. So
uh-oh. Look that up, people.
We found out that you're near and close to the Zodiac killings and things like that. And then you also like to go to concerts in Chicago. So this is good. So for this week, we're going to talk about our favorite movies based in or around Chicago. And what are you going to go with?
So this was hard because I feel like I had never been to Chicago until a couple of years ago, and I didn't really identify. There's not much identifiable about Chicago.
People have been saying this.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
But it's easy to recognize a movie based in New York or
Paris.
Paris, San Francisco, LA. There's just landmarkers, and Chicago. And even I've been there. It kind of looks like just a generic
city,
metropolitan area. They do have certain skyscrapers and things, but it's just a city. It's a very pretty city.
Yep.
But so nothing really identified. I never really associated anything with it or remembered. And I think no movies really came to mind. And then I thought, well, what about Chicago, the Broadway musical?
Everyone's mentioned that one too. Yeah.
It's not even filmed there. They filmed it in Toronto. The entire thing.
You've blown the illusion. So
yeah, that's upsetting. But I mean, it was based in the 20s, so they probably couldn't have filmed it in Chicago anyway.
And really got that look and feel they needed.
Either do tons of CGI or I don't know. It's also really cheap to film in Canada.
Which is what happens a lot now. Yep.
Yeah, so that was depressing because I really do love that movie.
Yeah.
And it's called Chicago. Come on.
You gotta film in Chicago.
And a lot of movies are based around the area.
Okay.
Or in the Midwest, I feel. There's all the suburban, the John Hughes movies.
Sure.
And even, Home Alone.
Yeah.
It's based in Chicago, but they live out in the suburbs.
Right.
And I think there are some... In the first one, does he go,
he really
into
doesn't...
the city at all?
No.
Are they in the city?
No, he's pretty much in the house. They go to the airport.
Yeah.
But no.
And then he's just in the house.
Yeah.
Which is in Evanston, Illinois, by the way.
The only time he actually goes places, and I think I'll probably even put this on the list, is he goes to New York.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, so that's And when I was looking up movies based in Chicago, they had Home Alone as the top one. And I'm like, no, it's not even there. It's in the suburbs.
Exactly. So that's why I picked Adventures in Babysitting, because they do end up in the city.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so that's kind of fun.
So then I fell on the default of Ferris Bueller's Day Off.
Of course. It's probably one of the, I would say between that and the Blues Brothers are the two main Chicago movies. Yeah.
Yeah, and a lot of others that were actually filmed there I have not seen, so maybe that's something to consider.
Yep.
But yeah, Ferris Bueller's Day Off, I was reading about it, and it was kind of an homage to Chicago in a way.
Yeah.
Unlike, I think, his other movies, there's a lot of kind of artsy, moments.
Yeah.
So my favorite scene, or one of them, is the museum.
Yes.
Scene. And there's the Smith song in the background.
And Cameron looking very deeply into that painting as it gets closer and closer. Yeah.
So that painting is called A Sunday Afternoon on the island of Le Grand Jeté. And it's a pointillism piece. Anywho, so when I went to Chicago, the first time, I really wanted to go to that museum, and it looks the same as it does in the movie.
Nice.
It's crazy. And they, all of the, their most famous paintings are in that scene.
Okay.
So it's really the kids are going to kind of what if you
would
go, if you would go as a tourist, you'd go. And so that seems a really nice little montage of. So
when you went, did you go with friends and hold hands?
No.
Okay, that would have been fun.
No, but it was really, really crowded when I went, actually. And they have they didn't feature it in that scene, but they have the American Gothic painting there.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, and basically you had to get in line to take a picture with it because everyone was posing next to it, they're holding a pitchfork and stuff. But
so did you go to the snooty restaurant that he was Abe from in the Sausage King?
No, I wonder which.
I don't know
where it is.
Yeah, we should do some research on that one. And then, of course, what's interesting, we were talking about how the structure of Chicago always kind of looks like any other city. Mm-hmm. But it's interesting because Wrigley Field is so distinct for a baseball park because of the ivy and the brick and everything. So it's kind of interesting that their baseball field looks like no other. But the actual city itself is kind of...
I think Wrigley Field is not really in the major part of the city.
Okay, it's in the northern part as opposed to the south side.
Yeah. Chicago, it's really weird. Like, when I went there, and, like, I was just there last month, it's like a gigantic suburb with, like, a cluster of city in the middle of it. Okay. So if you go just a few, like, 5 minutes out of the center, it's just, like, houses. Oh. And stuff, and just a lot of like residential neighborhoods. So I think, I never saw Wrigley Field because it was too far away. But so we're in an interesting place. But I really love that museum scene. And where else did Ferris Bueller?
Well, there's the parade down.
Yeah, but it's like again just like kind of a generic.
Yeah, I think they go to. Isn't there a they're in a stock exchange. I don't know.
I have no clue.
Yeah, I don't even know if it's still there. Because I remember they used to have a San Francisco stock exchange too. I don't know if it's still there either. But I remember Cameron making funny hand motions at them. They did a lot, but then again, they didn't do... I mean, they did a lot for one day, but I'm trying to think of... No, I think that's pretty much it. So
because Cameron's house is in...
Whatever the
sum, I think it's actually in LA.
Oh, really? Okay. Because it does look like a modern kind of type.
So let's see. It's actually, so the school where they ditch, it's from the northern suburbs.
Okay.
And the home of Cameron is in Highland Park, California.
That's interesting.
So because it looks like it's in the hills. Yeah, and it's like nowhere.
It goes off the cliff and they destroy the car. And that's a good point.
And let's see. Okay, so one of the landmarks from Chicago is the Tribune Tower.
Okay.
And I think that can be seen. The parking garage is also still there. Like
is
where
that
they leave the car.
The parking garage. Is that? I think when they're like all leaning and they're looking down, that's the Tribune Tower.
Okay.
Probably, yeah. And I don't know where his dad worked, so probably whatever that building was when he was watching the parade. But...
Oh no! Actually, the tower where they went to they go to the Sky Deck in the Willis Tower.
Okay.
And I've never been there. I'm afraid of heights, so I don't go to.
Okay, got it.
I don't like to be suspended.
So that's why you picked Vertigo before.
Personal connection.
Yes.
So yes, okay. So there is a landmark there. It's the Sky Deck of the Willis Tower.
Okay.
Bruce Wayne is also there in The Dark Knight.
There you go.
Ooh, we have another one. But that's tricky because The Dark Knight is like based in Gotham.
Yeah.
It's not in Chicago, but
that's kind of like Metropolis could be New York, and
I think a lot of The Dark Knight was filmed in Chicago. Actually, and that trilogy.
I believe Brian mentioned that.
Yeah. Okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Here it is.
Yeah.
Chez Key, the posh restaurant. It's at 22 West Schiller Street, Chicago.
It's still there.
Yeah, wow. You can go to... Oh, now it's a private home.
Oh, that's too bad.
So what was Chez Key, the posh restaurant in which Ferris manages to pass himself off as Abe from the Sausage King of Chicago.
That's right.
Yeah, it's a combination of two locations. The restaurant, which is in Los Angeles, and the exterior, which is a private home.
Okay. Oh. See, that's a problem with all these. You assume everything's there, and that's the magic of movie editing. But
yeah. And, they do go to Lake Michigan. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Good job.
Places there.
Thank you, Samantha.
You got a little lesson out of it.
Yeah, that's right. You wanted this, you got it.
All right, we're back with Malin. We're continuing our city theme, and for this week, we're going to do Chicago. So Malin has his list already, as he always does, and let's hear what he has.
Okay, cool. Hey, Brent. So my list for Chicago is pretty short. As I was doing some research, it looked to me like most films that are either set in and around Chicago either have to do with gangsters or cops.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and you probably notice I don't usually bring up a lot of like gangster and cop movies.
That's right.
So I had a thinner list to choose from. I'm blaming Chicago and its nefarious history.
Poor Chicago.
Nothing to do with my lack of exposure.
Have you been there before? Have you been to Chicago before?
Oh, yeah, I have been to Chicago. I love Chicago. It's amazing. The thing about Chicago, though, is for an architectural historian or anyone interested in architecture in the United States, it's kind of like a mecca because so much of 20th century architecture had its origins in Chicago. It's an amazing city. Yeah, I could go on about the city. It's the movies that I'm kind of thin on.
Right. That's okay, but we'll go through that. And if you want to add some seasoning with your love of architecture, please do.
Oh gosh, we'll see. I'll save that one for the end. So,
okay.
So the one that probably everyone's going to choose is Ferris Bueller's Day Off, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So rather than go on and on about like how awesome that movie is, because it's pretty much apparent, or too much about this city, I thought I'd share just my experience of the film.
Sure.
Which I saw it when it first came out in a cinema in Visalia, California, which is basically nowhere. If you're listening to this from Visalia,
sorry,
that's up. It's true. You know it. It's still nowhere. So I saw it, and it was just me and my dad in this theater. Nobody else there, and it was the opening weekend. And so I sat there and I watched it, and it was probably the first time I saw a film in the theater, and the reception by other people kind of affected my viewing of it.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, I was pretty young, but as the movie theater was empty, I kind of, I noticed that. Maybe that was just the first time I noticed being in an empty theater and thinking, wow, is there something wrong with the film?
Right.
And I don't think there was anything wrong with the film, and time has certainly proven that there really isn't too much wrong with it. But I think, word just hadn't gotten out, or, for whatever reason. Right. But I got this private showing of Ferris Bueller's Day Off with my dad in Visalia. And yeah, so that was pretty cool because we used to do movie nights or just road trips together. And, rarely we would get an opportunity where we were just in the theater alone. And sometimes that was important. Like when we saw A Fish Called Wanda, we were just laughing so hard. I could tell halfway through the movie we were pissing off everyone else in the audience.
Yeah, that's cool. That's cool. You guys actually got to see it in the theater because I think for me, I saw it on VHS for the first time. So that's cool. You got to experience it in the theater when it first came out.
Yeah, and I didn't see it again for years and years after that.
Okay.
But I hadn't been to Chicago before I saw the movie, and I didn't visit Chicago for years after that. So for a long time, that movie was kind of my central idea of the spaces of Chicago, basically because of the parade route scene and, a couple of other things. But yeah, so Ferris Bueller's Day Off, Chicago, the musical.
Yep.
Which interesting because really it's not so much about the city spaces, but about the idea of the city of Chicago, and not just that, but of the media empire and the way that people are portrayed in the media, and the lines between criminality and celebrity, and that's played out on a grander scale politically today. But the film is such a really great representation of. Not representation, sorry, that's not the word I'm looking for, but it's such a great translation of a musical theater production of an idea of a city. So it's removed from the city of Chicago in a few ways, but I think it does a really good job of, on an abstract level, still making a lot of great images and ideas, creations with the city.
No, absolutely.
Yeah, and it's just fun to watch, and a lot of those musical numbers are fantastic, especially the tango scene that's just so super bitter, and it's just fantastic.
Yeah, good pick.
And the other one, getting back to architecture though, Candyman.
Oh, really? No way.
Yeah, So did Candyman make your list?
No, it did not. But I'm glad you brought it up.
I'm hoping it makes Danielle's list, because if it was going to make anyone else's list, it's got to be Danielle. Right?
Oh, absolutely.
Have you interviewed Danielle yet?
Not yet, so I won't say a word. So we'll see what she does.
Okay, good. Okay, yeah. Well, I could hear the surprise in your voice when I mentioned Candyman. So I kind of have to assume that you haven't talked to Danielle yet.
No.
I loved Candyman as a kid. I think it has a lot to do with the Philip Glass score. It also has a lot to do with the overhead kind of helicopter shots of the city, both in the opening credits and I think elsewhere interspersed in the city. But it's interesting, too, that Candyman as a horror film also has this through-line really important subtext of social inequity in the city. And it comes back to the architecture. Like, there's a lot of discussion about oral histories, urban legends, and architecture, and the ways that the built environment affects people and communities, and also how areas within specific urban environments might be homes to particular legends. And I think that plays out in different cities. I remember when I was doing my graduate research on Las Vegas, I was doing research on the west side of Las Vegas, which was historically, that was a segregated neighborhood. And there were a few times when hotel investors became interested in the segregated neighborhood, because there was this population that was working in the hotels, but they weren't spending their money in the hotels on the Strip. And so they got clever to the idea that there was all of this money being paid into their pockets that was then literally, it was going across the railroad tracks into the segregated neighborhood.
Interesting.
So there were a couple of attempts to open up hotels, racially integrated to some degree, on the other side of the tracks. One of them opened in 1955, but there was another one where they started building it, but I guess the investing failed or whatever, so they never opened it. But it became an interesting kind of playground for kids in that neighborhood, and those kids had an urban legend about a character that might be kind of like hiding or living in the spaces of this kind of ruined hotel casino project. Well, the same kind of thing is going on in Candyman, and I find that really fascinating that they even bother to explore that. So I find all of that fascinating.
Absolutely.
About Candyman. And you can look at Candyman as being like a cheap slasher flick, which, frankly, it absolutely is. But if you want to look at that film and kind of dive deeper, there is more to it than is on kind of the poster for the film. That's
awesome. I need to go back and watch it, because it was mentioned back in I think it was episode 2 on our favorite horror or scary movie. I think I forgot who mentioned it. Might have been Terry.
Awesome.
Yeah, I know. Great pick.
But anyway, yeah, Candyman's great. So if it's something, if anyone's interested in seeing something about Chicago that isn't necessarily all about cops and gangsters, although there are some cops in here.
Definitely.
Candyman's something to kind of check out.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's it. That's all I've got.
All right. Well, those are great picks.
Like Road to Perdition and gangsters and whatever. And unfortunately, Miller's Crossing isn't about Chicago, so I can't talk about it.
That's true. That's a good point. Yeah, bummer. Anyway, but you got it in. Okay. Check out Miller's Crossing if you haven't seen it.
Exactly.
Awesome. Thank you, Malin.
Okay, thanks, Brian.
Bye. All right. Thanks to everyone who was interviewed this week for the podcast. It was a lot of fun. So speaking of Chicago, we got to give a few shout outs. One is to the Awesome 80s podcast. They're friends of the show. They've been great to us. And so I'm repaying the favor because they're good guys and they are based in Chicago. So definitely check them out. They are also big Cubs fans. And speaking of the Cubs, there's a great podcast about Wrigley Field and the first time that lights were brought into Wrigley Field in 1988 and the whole, leading up to that and whatnot. And there are some great stories about how in 1984, when the Cubs were making their World Series chase, that the commissioner at the time, I think it was Peter Ueberroth, might have been Bowie Kuhn, not sure which, but there was conflict because Wrigley Field didn't have lights at the time, and so they would have to play the World Series games during the day. Well, because of that, they had talked about maybe sending them to a different location, which would kill their home field advantage, and that would be miserable for the Chicago fans. So what they were going to do was not do an alternate location, but to then give them games, but lose their home field advantage, which would have been kind of stupid. As it turned out, the Cubs blew it in 1984, and the Padres ended up going to the World Series. And then 4 years later, the Cubs got lights. But this was an excellent podcast on ESPN 30 for 30 podcast. So if you enjoy baseball and you enjoy history and, of course, Chicago, definitely check them out. If you enjoy this podcast and are an iTunes user, please do the show a favor and head on over to the official iTunes page for Damn Good Movie Memories. Be sure to leave a rating and a review. This will allow the show to appear higher in the algorithm and spread the joy of this podcast to the masses. If you are not an iTunes user, you can still listen and subscribe on Podbean at damngoodmoviememories.podbean.com. Be sure to like us on Facebook under our Damn Good Movie Memories page. You can also listen to a limited number of episodes on YouTube. I hope you enjoyed this week's episode, and be sure to tune in next week for an all-new episode of Damn Good Movie Memories.